So Madam Mayor, if you are ready, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Okay, at this time, I'm going to send it to Councilwoman Breckus to lead us in the pledge.
Thank you. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good job. All right, at this time, I'm going to have item A2, roll call.
All right, Madam Mayor, I'll go ahead and take roll call. Councilmember Breckus.
Here.
Dorr.
Here.
Delgado.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Jardin.
Here.
Reese.
Here.
Oh, and Mayor Sheeby.
Here.
All right, Madam Mayor, you do have a quorum of the Reno City Council.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we're going to go into item A3. That would be public comment. I'm going to send it right back to you, Mickey.
All right, give me just a second. I was unprepared for this, so let me get my public comment pulled up. It will be just a second.
No problem.
Okay, Madam Mayor, so we did receive public comment for item A3. We have Marion Francis, Eric LaRude, Cindy Chandler, and Jacqueline Benitez. 2 were in support of various items and 2 were in opposition of various items. Those have been distributed to council and will be logged as a part of the record.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, moving on, I'm going to send us into item A4. That would be approval of the agenda. May I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you. I have a motion from
Okay.
Vice Mayor
Second.
Weber, second from Councilwoman Jardin. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we're going to head into item B1, that's presentations. And I'm going to assume City Manager Thornley that will be Debbie Lochner.
That is going to be Miss Lochner. We're going to move her over right now.
Okay, thanks so much.
All right, Debbie, I have moved you over. You should be good to go. You're muted. There you go.
Thank you, Mickey. And have you given me the access to share my screen?
Trying to figure this out as I am not an IT professional, but give me just a second and see what I can do here.
Okay. I should be, let's see if I should, nope.
Yeah. Okay, Debbie, will you go ahead and double check? You should have rights.
I do. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
So what I have is a quite lengthy presentation. Today we are going to talk about, again, just a quick run through the strategic plan and the guiding principles. You've seen that several times. We'll go over an overview. We'll look at the general fund. We'll look at our other funds, our proprietary funds, and redevelopment. Redevelopment, we can go through fairly quickly because you just had this update a little while ago. So overall, this is just a reminder of the council's strategic plan. Of course, I like the green box the best, but they all work together. As a reminder, there are 17 guiding principles that the council has approved and that the finance department uses to develop the budget. So overall, what we have included in this budget, there are 21 new positions. There are some increases for contracted services. We have expanded the Clean and Safe Team program, and we have expanded the MOST Team program with these positions. And in addition, there is a forensics team that is new to this budget. And we've also included funding for one-time items such as fire turnouts, record digitization, that's our historical records that we do a little bit every year, and an update to the Reno Direct digital platform. In addition, this budget will fully fund our annual contribution to the OPEB Trust and increases our funding for workers' comp and the risk funds and fleet funds, while also increasing our general fund reserve from a budgeted level in 2021 of 12% to a budgeted level of 13%. When you look at the strategic investments that have been included into the budget, this is just really the numbers associated with them. The actual benefits and what they will be doing will be later in the presentation. But you can see that where those positions are going in which departments. Overall, when you look at the total FTEs by department, this is in total, we are budgeting for 1,315 and a half people in this budget. When you look at the strategic investments, so we'll go real quickly by department, the city clerk.
Debbie, I'm so
Yes, ma'am?
sorry to interrupt, but that last slide, I just want to make sure when you showed it, was that with additions or today's, how many staff are there today?
So approved in our 2021 budget is 1,294 and a half people. So
The
then
new budget?
that's current budget. And then we're adding 21 positions to get to the 1315.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. When you look at the city clerk's office, again, this is an ongoing project to digitize our historical records and preserve those records. So we have provided $30,000 to continue that project. In the city manager's office, we have added an assistant city manager to perform some top-level administrative work and provide some leadership for policy implementation and actually, updating our current policies and creating additional policies that we may need and make sure that the organization is moving forward. In addition, we have added a program assistant. This is to expand the Clean and Safe team and to provide some more assistance there in managing where they go, when they go, how often they go. The management analyst is to provide the data analysis with a focus on public safety. This is a position we talked about before where we didn't know exactly where it was going to land, and it has landed in the city manager's office so that we can really serve the entire organization. In addition to that, we have added an ombudsman in the city manager's office to help us with better communication and engagement. In civil service, we added a civil service technician. This will allow us to stop the ever revolving door of temp staff and allow them to really solidify their programs with permanent staff and keeping their professional level up and actually helping that little tiny department move forward. When you look at the community development department, we have added a senior planner. This is to focus on long-range planning and the Title 18 implementation and some master plan updates, neighborhood outreach processes, and other priorities as council has a lot of interest in this area of our organization. In the finance department, we have added a management analyst to move forward our risk management program to try to begin the process of creating the program of what that should look like under a centralized function. For fire, we have added personal protective equipment. This is their turnouts. So they needed some additional funding to fund their turnouts for the year. So that is a one-time investment into the fire department to ensure that they can replace their turnouts when needed. In HR, the human resources, we have added in another human resources technician, and this will really help that small organization within our larger organization to better support our staff and our departments, and bring a lot more of the HR processes back into the HR department. Right now, a lot of that is disseminated out into the departments. We'd like to re-centralize it. In neighborhood services, there's a community outreach coordinator. This is a consultant. So this is a one-time cost. It's a pilot program to continue our outreach to underserved communities to really identify how that program is helping us to see if we want to bring it in-house and understand. It's really an understanding and a continuation of what we are doing now. In addition to that, we are replacing the platform that Reno Direct uses to take in the work orders and communicate the outcomes. And that is an annual cost of $200,000, but will allow for a significant amount of efficiency within the department. In Parks and Recreation, we have added 2 maintenance workers for parks, and those will continue to focus on our highly visible janitorial and maintenance efforts within our parks. In addition, we have added 2 river rangers. This is an expansion to the clean and safe team to again help us address the population along the river that we would like to move into our new Nevada Cares campus. In the police department, we have added 4 mental health counselors. This is an expansion to our mobile outreach safety team, our MOST team, and this will allow for more mental health counselors. We currently have some. This will just allow more to help us with that and expand that program in the areas where it really will benefit us. In addition, we have added a forensics team, which consists of a forensic evidence supervisor and 2 criminalists. This is to bring in-house the capabilities of doing some of our forensic analysis, as we are still working with the county on what that looks like. In addition to that, there is some contracted money in there for the forensics to send out the items that we collect to be tested and with an outside company. And in utility services, we have a maintenance worker to really concentrate on the USA Locates program, which as we continue to do more development, infill, and otherwise, we need to respond within a certain period of time to make sure that we are doing this. Right now, we are pulling people off of other jobs to make sure we do this work. In addition, we have added a maintenance worker 1 to benefit our lift station technicians to really enhance that program. When you look at general fund, so our property tax history, you can see that our property tax really did peak in 2010. Then they went down and they hit the floor in 2014 and continued to go back. It took not quite a decade for the revenues to come back to where they were pre-recession, or if you recall, that recession began in 2007, and you can see our property taxes were still growing for another 2 years. This just really highlights the 2-year lag in property tax revenues. And we have continued to grow throughout the pandemic, and that has been a lot of new construction and a lot of turnover in existing homes. So again, the new construction keeps the property taxes growing. When you look at the overall C-tax history, we have continued to do better than budget this entire year. You can see that February diverges a little bit from prior year historical, And I think that is primarily because of stimulus checks that came in. So, people spent the money, and this one is a really volatile revenue source. So we continue to look at it every month and see how it's behaving. Oops. This chart I really like because it does highlight the 2-year lag in C-tax and how 2-year lag in property tax, and how C-tax really does react almost immediately to economic conditions. So you can see from the prior recession, C-tax in 07 was the peak, and it would hit its floor in 2010 and started recovering. Whereas in 2010 was when the property taxes peaked, and then they hit their floor in 2014, while C-tax was really on the rise. And you can also see that C-tax has continued to rise at a much greater level than property taxes, and that is a function of the property tax caps. So overall, for the coming budget, we have projected $230 million in revenues. You'll see in a minute that it's not quite $230 million in revenues, because there is a $3 million gap in our revenues. And we will be using either last year's savings or current year savings, or reducing some expenditures in order to balance the budget. We have not done that quite yet. But this is really just to show you where those revenues are, C-tax and property tax being our largest revenues. Overall, you can see that for every revenue source, we've essentially projected growth, with the exception of intergovernmental revenue. And that is really because that's where our grants go. And over the last couple of years, as you know, we've received significant amount of federal government assistance. And that is projected to go down. The other area you see is miscellaneous. We budgeted it back at our normal level. And so it does, as things come in throughout the year, those miscellaneous types of revenues would go there, but it is budgeted at a lower level. Overall, this chart is really just to show you where our estimates are, and the assumptions of what we have put into the upcoming budget. When you look at the expenditures, they are estimated to increase. Increase in some areas, but it shows an overall decrease because of the CARES government assistance that we were able to spend. We spent all that money essentially in fiscal year 21, and a little bit in fiscal year 20, but most of it got spent in fiscal year 21, and that's why that's a significantly higher budget. What we do have in the fiscal year 22 projected budget, you see the green highlighted item where we are projecting to transfer $2 million to the Event Center Debt Fund. That is the C-tax backing that we are expecting. This year we needed about $2.4 million, and we think next year it's about $2 million based on our current estimates. We are uncertain at this point how the ARPA funds are going to assist with this, but this is one of the areas of room tax where we would be looking at revenue replacement. If you see in fiscal year 21, we have a transfer to the risk fund, and we also have the capital funding plan. So the transfer to the risk fund is really to cover some large payouts we had out of the risk fund this year. And that will just make that fund a little healthier. Overall, when you look at expenditures by category, you see that our largest expenses, of course, are salaries and wages and employee benefits. As a service organization, that is appropriate. When you look at our expenditures, our largest expenditures really are for public safety, and understanding that public safety is general fund funded almost entirely, whereas some of the other areas we do get some other funding, so we don't need as much general fund necessarily to support all the things that we do. Overall, when you look at the expenditures by department, you can see, again, salaries and wages and employee benefits are the largest part. And this is just to give you kind of an overall idea of what the expenditures by department are in the budget. In addition to by department, we have what is non-departmental, and I apologize, I know this is probably difficult to read, but we tried to give you a little bit more detail. Usually we just give you the broad categories. So we do fund, in our non-departmental area, we do fund the city manager contingency of $1 million. Under intergovernmental, we have our OPEB and our pay-go insurance for retiree medical. We have in there our freight house pass-throughs. We have the heart lung liabilities, the RCVA payments, and some other expenses that we pay for out of there. And then of course we also pay for our utilities. We're not exempt from paying for water and power. Under debt service, we are paying off the body camera loan. Is a medium-term obligation. And then in our transfers out, these really are transfers from the general fund to other funds. So we transfer to our debt service funds, we transfer to the capital projects funds, and then also to the CAC. Overall, as we have told you before, when we built this budget, our total revenues are $230 million and our expenditures are $233 million. So we're essentially just under $3 million is our structural deficit, and that is building our reserves at 13%. When you look at we always have some unassigned fund balance and some assigned fund balance. Assigned fund balance really typically is the carryover amount from one year to the next for our encumbered funds. We had some large assigned fund balance in fiscal year 20 because the council actually committed some fund balance to ensure that we did not have to have employee layoffs or furloughs, and also to ensure that the CARES government assistance got spent according to the council's priorities. When we look at the city's special revenue funds, so special revenue funds are funds that have particular source of revenue that's specific to the expenditures within that fund. A good example is the street fund, because everybody kind of understands the street fund. The street fund receives its revenues and then it does street projects and pays for some salaries and benefits, and also does some street projects.
Testing, test.
Significant amount of street projects for us. But we also have a HUD and state housing fund. We have the Community Assistance Center. The room tax fund is the one we're looking at. That revenue is still running about 50%. So we would be looking at ARPA funds, hopefully, to replace some of those lost revenues. And we have some court funds where the court gets some specific grants and revenue sources that are that they spend. Specifically, in the last few years, they've been using it for some technology upgrades. And we have our drug forfeiture fund. Overall, within our special revenue funds, we do have projects that we do, capital projects. So within CDBG, the projects are about $1.8 million. Within the street fund, that's the largest capital outlay that is done in our special revenue funds. This kind of outlines what we are looking at. And we try to make sure that we are, looking at the projects that are health safety issues or preservation of assets, or where we can get some economies of scale. Our neighborhood street programs, that is the only place where neighborhood streets really get funded unless we're able to get grants. So that is a large program for us. And in the room tax fund, we fund $50,000 for public art for small capital outlay projects to meet our public art requirement related to capital outlay. So when you look at the other general government funds, so we have the general capital outlay, we have the room surcharge, that is the $2 surcharge where all the money goes to capital outlay. We have our event center fund, and the Parks Capital Projects Fund, and our Capital Tax Fund. within the general capital projects fund, we looked at, again at preservation of assets, health safety issues, and economies of scale. So you will see on the left side where it's the capital projects fund, we always fund $400,000 for parks capital maintenance projects and $400,000 for city capital maintenance facility issues. In addition to that, this year we included some additional $200,000 for some fire facilities. In addition to just we've been neglecting some of our fire stations, so we really did look at parking lots and driveways, and we looked at roof replacements as our economies of scale and preservation of assets. So you will see parking lots and driveways. You see some several roof upgrades and roof replacements. And then there's a small amount going towards our meter replacement program. We also have our fire apparatus replacement program and our public safety center funding plan. So that is the amount of funding that was identified to go to the public safety center project. When you look at our other funds, so the room surcharge, that really is for projects at the bowling stadium and the event center. We held off doing any capital projects during the current fiscal year, and we'll look at them again once we really understand what the revenues are going forward. If there are projects that we need to take on this fiscal year, we will have those discussions. And then there's the park districts. We just wanted to let you know what the proposals are for the parks this year. Is about $1.8 million for parks. When you look at the debt funds, so overall, the debt service funds are, the Cabela's kind of stands out there because it shows negative. We have not been making the payments because the sales tax that supports that particular bond has not been coming in at the level to make the full payment. So that's why it looks negative, but we're not required to pay anything beyond what comes in the revenues. The railroad debt service is performing as expected. Event center debt service is expecting a $2 million transfer in from the general fund for its C-tax backing. And then we have our SAD debt service fund, and that really is all of the SADs within the city get paid out of there. So our proprietary funds, the largest proprietary fund, of course, is our sewer fund, and followed by our self-insured, our self-funded medical plan. And not to say that, you know, when you look at workers' compensation, those are, you know, how much we have to spend, but that fund, we've been building it up to try to get to where it needs to be. So some of these funds, while these are the revenues and expenditures, we may be actually pulling in some more money if we need to as a transfer, which we did this year with the risk fund, as I showed you earlier. Overall, when you look at the projects that are proposed within our proprietary funds, again, sewer being the largest, you see you know, your annual lift stations, that's an annual kind of project that we've been doing. You have some courtyard security upgrades, and I was trying to, the STED expansion, you see that in both operation and maintenance and capital, because a portion of it is funded, is operating related, and a portion of it is expansion related. And then you'll see some sewer collection systems for the same reason. It's split between operations and capital, and the capital project. The fleet, that's the annual replacement program for fleet. For RDA 1 and 2, we just went through this, so I am going to go through this really quickly. RDA 1 is, you know, collects the rent on the garage and pays for the upkeep. In addition, that we have a little debt service fund on RDA 1. This is the one where council gave us the authority to extend the RDA1 area, amend the plan in RDA2, and do an interfund loan for a 2-year period so that we could pay the bonds off in 2027 and use that funding going forward to invest in our downtown area. So overall, you see that our revenues are less than our expenditures in the general fund side of RDA1. And when you look at the revenues and expenditures in the debt service fund, you can also see that it is not adequate to pay that. But thanks to council direction at the last meeting, we will overcome this issue. In RDA2, there are 7 different areas. It is a very long, expanded, kind of spotty area. It includes Cabela's, the baseball district, Park Lane Mall area. And again, this RDA2 has been paying the baseball agreement for the last couple of years. And there's a small bond for improvements at Cabela's, but that's a really small bond. So overall, you can see that the revenues are exceeding the expenditures in RDA2 by about $1.5 million. And you can see in the debt, a very small debt is paid without an issue, and there's extra money from that as well. So our next steps for council is will come back on May 10th with some deeper discussions on forensic special events, parks, pay rates and fees, and the transition of homeless services. And if there are any requests, information requests from today, we will bring them forward for you on the 10th. And then on the 11th, we will have a more in-depth discussion regarding records, litigation and risk funding, the Reno Direct digital platform, and also any additional follow-up information from the May 10th discussions. On May 12th, which is a regular council meeting, if there is any follow-up information needed, we will provide that to council. We have a placeholder on the agenda for an if needed follow-up. And then on May 19th, we are requesting that the council will adopt this budget. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. I believe that I will be asking, I think Councilwoman Breckus, you have your first questions, but can I just ask you if we should, I think we have time for the council members to have you have your 3 minutes. Go ahead, Councilwoman Breckus.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to be here all day. So if others who, as long as we need you to keep quorum and blocked out the time that was on my calendar. So if others want to go ahead who have to leave early,
I think Councilmember Dewar has the most pressing need to step away. Is that right?
Right. Let's go ahead.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and go. Thank you so much for doing that, Councilwoman Breckus. Councilwoman Dewar.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate the presentation. It is a lot to take in every time we go over it, Debbie. I'm so sorry, but a lot of processing here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually going to re-listen to this presentation. I have the printout. I just had a couple questions, 1 or 2 quick questions. Back on the positions. So I saw 2 river rangers, which is something I had really supported. I just didn't recall that we had them last time we talked, which was, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. Were they a new ad or did I just miss it last time?
So I believe when we had our initial budget study sessions with the council, we listened to what the council said and what your desires were. And we added the things that we felt were going to move this organization forward. So yes, they are new. Great. You did not see them the original time, but again, that is something that we felt would move the organization forward.
And would those be housed in parks or where?
In parks.
Parks. And then would they also have some kind of police officer training, like to be a ranger? When you think of a ranger, you think that they know about parks, they're there to help people, and they also have some kind of police duties. What do you guys think? Yes? Okay, I'm seeing Doug nodding. And so then one more question on parks. You had debated between 2 maintenance workers, 2 tree workers, 1 of 1. And I had talked to Matt Basil a couple weeks ago, and he said that, you know, he's trying to train someone to be sort of right below him, I guess you would say, kind of a one-off, not necessarily the team member, like where they go out and work in teams of 2, but maybe a person that's the junior forester, for lack of a better word, I don't know what you would call it. But I would just love Jamie to revisit that. I don't know if the maintenance workers also need to work in teams of 2, but it's just worth a conversation, you know, just while we're at this moment. And then just one last thing for this round. I have been talking with my colleagues at the county. We've had a long needed sidewalk and bus stop area, and that's, everybody will know where this is. It's at the Washoe County Golf Course. It's right on Urban and Plumas, and there is a bus stop right on the corner. And I reached out to RTC, and they said they have some grant funds coming available in July-ish, and there'll be an application for them, but they would need a match. And I wondered if this is something that might be along in Public Works as one of our capital projects. Their grant funds at RTC are 2-year. They have sort of 2 sets. And this would be a project that we'd look to be joining with the county, you know, to cost share, because the land is the county's, but the streets are ours. And there's nowhere to walk and there's nowhere to stand for the bus stop. And I don't know if it's on the bus stop list. In fact, Amy Cummings was going to check on that, but it just seemed like so many people are on that intersection and there is no place to walk. So I'd love for Public Works just to look into if they could potentially reserve some match funds. It could cost up to $300,000 by the time you add the sidewalk, the bus stop, a pedestrian crossing. And it could also cost, if we don't do the whole sidewalk, just the bus stop, she said as little as $15,000. So the sidewalks have been needed, you know, they were never been there. You know, they've since the, you know, let's just say 40 years, there's been no sidewalks on either side of Urban. And this is an area that is a lot of walking, and people do use that bus stop, especially from the area around Virginia Lake. There are all the apartments and so just something to look at. And I told the county's going to be making the same ask to see if we can team on this project. So just a small thing, but.
Well, and one of the things that we did look at for capital was economies of scale and making sure that we're preserving assets. So this is one of those, meets one of those requirements, right? For the economies of scale and making sure that we are saving money on what we are doing.
Right, so it's one of those places, since there's no bus stop, there's no ADA, right. You know, there's no anything.
Happy to have them reach out to our team and discuss the project together.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Were there others? I don't see Councilwoman Jardin that was going to have to leave. She may have left already. So let's go back to Councilwoman Breckus.
Thank you. And thanks for that presentation. It's helpful to see a lot of it again that we sat through back in March. So the more you get it, the more you understand. So I appreciate the repetition. 21 positions, that's a big ad. One of the things that we asked for, but I don't recall seeing coming through on the packet, was an org chart. Is there a new org chart, Mr. Thornley, that you've prepared?
Yeah, we're getting that into a place where we can share it with you next week.
Yeah, it's hard to set a budget, you know, when you don't really know the org chart. And you know, when I first came on, the manager's office was pretty big comparatively, all things compared, then it shrunk down. And now I see it growing again, and I'm comfortable with that. I understand a new manager wants to reform the, you know, reconfigure the organization how he feels it should be. But I see a lot going on there. $1 million contingency is really hefty in my view. And particularly he only has $50,000 approval authority under the resolution. So a lot of that will be coming forward to us, but I think it's more than double that what we've had before in the past, and not having seen contingency, you know, it looks to me like it is. Maybe one year we moved a lot in because we knew we had a contingency, but I think when I started it was about 350,000. So I'm a little uncomfortable running it that far. But I'm most interested about this assistant city manager, because it's been a while since we've had 2 assistant city managers. I think, do you have a chief of staff in that organization also?
I think ideally we would have two assistant city managers and a chief of staff. I do believe that we need an assistant city manager to sit over the internal functions of the house and help with the administration of those core hub services. Yes.
Okay, I don't think, and I've been, associated with the city for a long time. I don't think I've seen two assistant city managers, a chief of staff, and a policy person. Maybe that was because you just hired a policy director since, the big spending days in 2005, 2006. So I'm really trying to understand, because we've wanted some worker bees in some functions that are still not there. And I understand we're adding a lot, and those are a volunteer coordinator, because a lot of people want to reach out and help. A grants administrator, particularly now, the single audit showed even in, non-big federal spending times, we blew it on a FEMA grant. And now with all this federal money coming down, there's a lot of opportunities to blow it. And I hope, that would be a helpful position. And then I've advocated along Ms. Dewar's line of thinking that we need a pedestrian coordinator to break into public works and start presenting other, not just the traffic warrants and the MUTCD values. So for me, if we're putting in high level people, I'm really looking for a justification for that over the worker bees who are not getting kind of some of that done. But let me ask you about hiring and that assistant city manager. You've hired 3 positions in your office. One was in HR. Without advertising those positions publicly, is your plan with the second assistant city manager, if it's approved, do you have a person on the list that you collected when you were reaching out to people? Because I've talked to you about it, and I'm not comfortable with you hiring without advertising positions for external hires. It's highly problematic to me. The city manager form of government is for an apolitical administrator to make sure that, among other things, there's merit-based systems in place for hiring promotion, not cronyism, not patronage hiring. And it's hard to defend that you're running an organization in that apolitical administrative function when you're making hires, no one knows how you're making them, calling up people or people who reach out to you. So tell me about this assistant city manager position. If you get the position in place July 1, how do you plan to hire for that?
I don't have a list for that position. It's certainly a different skill set than I was looking for with the ACM that we did just fill. I think it's incumbent on me to spend some time with those core internal hub services that I just described, where my attention for the first 6 or 7 months was on those external facing departments. And so it's tough for me to say right now exactly what we're really dialing into in terms of the actual intangible skill sets there. But we're looking obviously for a strong administrator. We'd be looking for someone with a background in finance and human resources. And like I say, the administrative side of the house. Will that require us going out to advertisement at the ACM level? At this juncture, I think that the answer is yes. I don't see that there's anyone locally necessarily that checks all those boxes, at least of which I'm aware. So yeah, I do think that we're probably out searching for that person. In terms of the hires that we have on board, I think we've hired a handful of immensely talented people who have already demonstrated a value add to our organization. I'm thrilled that they're here.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just looking for a commitment that you are hiring with equal opportunity for all to have the option to compete for a job. That's what I'm looking for, because these are very, important roles. And if access isn't provided for everyone from diverse backgrounds to apply for openings, not even aware that they're going on, then how do we, have a merit-based system, and how do we make sure that we're an organization that's valuing what anyone can bring to the workforce? So I'm very enthused to hear that you will be competitively hiring going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If I may just address the contingency comment. So the city manager's contingency of $1 million has resided in the budget every year since I've been here. And granted, I have not been here as long as you, Councilmember Breckus, but as long as I have been here, it has been at that level.
Thank you. Next up, I don't see a hand, so I'll go to Councilman Reese.
I think my hand is the electronic wavy part.
Oh,
of the hand.
there. It was
Thank you so
hiding in the background. Sorry.
No
Madam
worries.
Vice Mayor, I apologize jumping in. I just wanted to let council know that since we had some technology issues downstairs, we have a different format of how we're running the meeting, so I don't have the clock available on the video. So I will be running it and I will do my best to pop in and let council know so we can just stay.
You know what?
in order today.
Let's not use that right now because I think that everybody's kind of taking their turn and they've gone a little longer than 3 minutes, but this is a time that we can at least have one round and we'll call it when we can.
Okay, I'll defer to you. Just let me know if you want that to change.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Councilman Reese.
Madam Vice Mayor, thank you so much. I have a couple of thoughts and comments. One is a sort of a starting point to respond to my good colleague from Ward 1. I agree very much that we need to focus on grant writing. And so certainly if there's any room for flexibility still within the budget, a grant writer I think is a good choice. Although I understand from talking with a number of different department heads that we have used consultants successfully, and also we've worked in-house. I know that Eric Jensen was responsible for a number of grants. At the bottom line is I don't want us to miss out on free money, right? And so that's the goal of grants. And certainly grant writers are a unique group of folks. It's not a skill set that everyone has. So I certainly think that that's an important point that Ms. Breckus made, I think, as well as Ms. Dewar has made in the past. As to the comments, though, about the city manager's office, I'll just say for my part, you know, I think it is important that we remember that we hire only 2 people, right? The city manager and our clerk. The rest of the employees are hired by, in this form of government system, by the city manager and the department heads. And so I'm not going to micromanage how you post your hires or who you're hiring, except to the extent I would say, you know, we all value diversity as an organization. The city of Sparks, I believe, which is about a third or maybe even a quarter of our size, has 2 ACMs. And I think that that system with 2 ACMs may provide the best bang for the buck. And so as far as this budget is concerned, I think that it makes some sense to see that organizational structure grow a bit. I don't think there's any like massive overstretch or growth going on. I think it's just we recognize that we have stretched our employees quite to the limit. And I won't distinguish between worker bees or other people. It takes all different types to run an organization. And certainly in terms of leadership, having good leadership at the top helps to run those departments and organizations more effectively. So I'm supportive of what you're seeking there. And I'll also leave it to your discretion about how you wish to hire that person. An ombudsperson was the other piece of this puzzle. And I don't entirely understand yet how it fits in. And maybe when you reveal the org chart, it'll be more concise. But if there's also an ombudsperson plus a city chief of staff plus an assistant manager, I just want to make sure that you have thought through completely what it is that you're trying to accomplish in terms of the organizational structure at the very top of the organization, because I don't know entirely what the vision is. I do have some other questions, but perhaps maybe I'll take a pause and see if there is anything, Mr. Thornley, you wish to add to my sort of general statements and then comments.
No, I mean, I think, you know, the chief of staff role is one that I expect stay vacant until we have someone plugged into the second ACM role. And then, you know, they'll pick up sort of those special projects and making sure that our strategic initiatives continue to move forward. The ombuds person is included in this budget largely as a response to what we heard you all saying in the first set of discussions on this next year's budget. It's been described kind of a lot of different ways, but I think it is fair to say that position is one where those intangible soft skills that are so difficult to find and measure will be incredibly important in whoever fills that role. Councilmember Breckus has described it as someone who can mediate neighbor disputes. I've talked to a handful of other folks, and perhaps it's a place to receive concerns from the public that they're not comfortable putting down in writing for Reno Direct, or coordinating, trouble that we're having in some of our more public-facing departments on really specialized issues. I don't think that it's fair to call it, I heard it called in one iteration of this conversation, sort of a super liaison. And I don't think that that's right. I think that this is a person who is an experienced customer service professional. I think it's a person who understands our strategic mission and why we do things the way we do, and is able to bridge the gap between people in the community who are experiencing some difficulty with our organization and the very top echelon of the organization, so that we make sure we're doing things the right way. And if we do have an issue, that we can make a sound and quick and therefore effective decision on how to readjust.
Well, and I guess my only response to that would be is that, again, I go back to what I said at the initial outset, which is we as a body, the 7 of us, get to hire you and Ms. Turney, but we don't get to micromanage all the other departments or the department heads. And so I try my best to observe those distinct lines. We'll set the policy concerns and we'll approve the budget. And sometimes those things are not entirely aligned. I think your task as a city manager, and one which I think you're navigating well, is trying to align your organizational structure with the values and policies that we have identified. And so I am willing to give you a lot of latitude in that, understanding that if it's not working out, you may hear from us, right? If this position does not materialize into what you think it is, or I don't frankly know if there's enough work to keep a full-time salaried $121,000 a year plus person in such a role. I don't know. And so it would be interesting to see. And sometimes I think, as the mayor has said, we have to be willing to change the status quo, and we have to be willing not to fear the fear of failure. And so I can't really speak to it. Ombudsperson person in my experience is someone who exists kind of outside of the traditional lines of a city manager's office or even ours, so that we aren't perceived as having undue influence over that person, and they kind of operate outside of the traditional power structures in an organization, so that they have objectivity. And so, but again, I'll leave my other questions, which are so that everyone's aware where I'm heading. I want to talk a little bit about the River Rangers and the MOST team, which are 6 positions on this budget. And I want to really drill down and understand what those are about in my second round.
Thank you. Councilman Delgado?
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. A lot of my questions really fall in line with Councilmember Reese, but just wanted more than anything add comments to my appreciation for how often now we've seen the budget in this form, and really is a credit to you, Doug, and City Manager Thornley, and to your team. I don't recall seeing or having the opportunity to have dialogue related to a budget this much. And I think it's really a reflection about you listening to what the council has kind of demonstrated in these conversations with you. So I believe the Madam Mayor, more often than not, has shared over the past years that it was never a budget that we can point to and say it's our budget. And so I think you really tried to make that opportunity exist. And so thank you for that. I also think it reflects, to your point with the discussion of the ombudsman person, is hearing from the community. And so how are you trying to best align with the community needs in addition to just our growing needs as a city? So appreciate your insight with that. And to Councilmember Reese's point as well, is we know our position is to be at the 100,000 foot level, and it's there to really support you in your position to grow your team around you, a trusting and honest team, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to have to really do the hard work. And so we want to make sure you're successful, because your success is everyone else's success. And so we want to make sure you have the freedom and and also just the professionalism to do that. So more comments than anything else, just appreciate it, because I know I've never necessarily remember having this much dialogue in-house. But last point, Councilman Breckett's point is opportunities for existing city team members to see themselves grow within our organization has always been something we've heard over the years. And so it'd be pretty great to see those opportunities exist. And so, and I know that's something that you have in mind as well. So thank you. More comments than anything else. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman Delgado. I want to go back to you. Let's go ahead and go back to you because I know that you have to leave, and I'll
Thank you.
my comments after that.
All
So
right,
go ahead.
thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Vice Mayor. I just wanted to support a couple things I heard from my colleagues. Number one, I definitely think that 2 ACMs are called for, whether it's Sparks or Washoe County. There's a lot to do in this organization, and it requires high-level thinking and organizational skills, and I support that. Number two, this ombuds person, you're clearly listening, and I'm going to give you the range of problems that I think they could solve. Everything from, you may recall, we went round and round on waste management, trying to figure out some neighborhoods and how to work with them, waste management and ourselves, and still get a contract done. It was taking a tremendous amount of time from myself, Councilmember Breckus, not our liaisons, but ourselves. And I think an ombuds person who could have dug into the weeds and actually met with neighbors and worked through these issues would have been super helpful. Another example is people sometimes call me, they've gotten bounced all around our organization and nobody seems to be able to help them. This could be a place that they get help. Another example is we have a lot of lawsuits. I've observed ever since I joined council, and some of these things I think can be headed off if we just have a better understanding of city process with the people. And again, it goes beyond an instant case of, one of the council members trying to solve something and more people getting frustrated that they can't access information. Even though we have a very supportive clerk, they just don't know the process necessarily. One of them, I saw we recently got an open meeting law request because we didn't have, a video of a meeting posted. That could be fixed. The ombuds person could elevate that issue, get the right people in the room and get that fixed. And one more I'll give you, these are all from this week. Someone wanted to make a contribution to Relief Reno. They went on our website where it says donate. And instead of just being able to donate on a credit card or PayPal or something, they had to go through an extensive online form and they got frustrated and they quit. Most places, if you want to donate, it's a pretty simple process, click a few buttons, write your name and put in your credit card information and you're done. But that's not really anybody's job. I mean, that's between parks, that's between finance, that's outward facing with public relations, that's with trees. I mean, it crosses so many different groups and even within your ACM positions. But it's the kind of thing that I could have maybe said, look, maybe this is something our ombuds person could help you with because it'll help the next 20 people, the next 50 people make a donation. Let's get this fixed. But it will never be anybody's top priority, right? It'll never be on number one thing to solve for anybody. And yet it's been out there for 6 years. I've heard the same complaint. We can't donate. We're not going to donate. So I've just given you some wide range of issues that are complex, take a lot of our time, but could help the city run more smoothly. And then finally, I do want to support, I don't know the grants administrator kind of job, but I do know that we need to access as many grants as possible. They're out there, the money's out there. If we don't grab it, others will. I'm going to be president of Western Nevada Development District. They go through a funding cycle every year. This time, because of Eric, we were able to get a $5 million grant to help Public Works, but they have more grants this year. And there's more examples of these kinds of monies that are significant money. It's not $10,000, it's $100,000, it's $1 million that are out there if we go find it and figure out, put the match stuff together. So anyway, good job. I agree with Councilmember Delgado too. I see that you listened and then you reflected and then you thought, does this work for us? And then you came back with some changes. And I especially hope that you talk with Madam Mayor because she has been one of the more frustrated over the years of, the budget doesn't seem to reflect council priorities. And I think it'd be good to check in, with all of us, but especially her, in this process. So thank you so much. And I am going to sign off and I appreciate this time today.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Dewar. We'll See you soon. Thank you. I'm going to just jump in for 1 minute. And I want to say that I actually just support all the comments that have made by my colleagues, and just appreciate especially our manager for the most that I've seen since we've been here discussing the budget. I know that when I got on, when we were discussing the 2019 budget, 2019-2020 budget with Councilwoman Breckus and Dewar, Councilwoman, it was just hard because we felt like and I'm speaking for the two of them, but I felt like we were not having a full discussion with the entire council, and that I just really appreciate this opportunity that we've had during this course of time, because we've had lots of meetings and good information, and that we feel a part of, or I feel a part of being able to hear what we've talked about coming to fruition and being placed on the budget. So that's one thing. I really want to support the comments made by Councilwoman Breckus about a volunteer coordinator as well. I think we absolutely need to consider that, or maybe that's part of what an ombudsman would do. And I don't know that would be the case, but I really do think at somewhere along the line, we need a volunteer coordinator. And I think that's really helpful in so many ways. In regard to the ombudsman, I absolutely appreciate and think that this is one that we absolutely need. And I think that the salary needs to be more than what we've quoted here. Because that person is going to be responsible for a lot of issues in a lot of areas. And I think that ombudsman, just as Councilwoman Dewar had mentioned, that it could be used, for the waste management part, but it also could be the person that would help with our negotiations with MB Energy and with negotiations, period. So I think that there is a place for that ombudsman that is higher ranking than that salary is, in my opinion. The other thing is that the grants administrator is a definite, absolutely, we need to have a grants administrator because that is how we will be finding the money, and somebody has to be absolutely focused on that. And one last thing, I think that's just my thoughts going through this process. Okay, so let's go back to Councilman Delgado. Oh, wait a second. We're going to start over, right? Because I think everybody's had one opportunity. Okay, let's go back to Councilwoman Breckus. Thank you.
Madam Vice Mayor, can I just chime in really quick?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Yes.
no, it's okay.
Wait.
It's totally fine.
Okay.
I'll just butt in if you don't mind. So I just want to say thank you so much to our city manager, Doug Thornley. And I think so many of you were spot on with your comments about the past years and also being involved intimately in this process, because they are correct every year. I've been so frustrated where it seems like it's a staff-driven budget versus a council-driven budget. And so there tends to be sort of this, different sides of the coin. And this is the first time that I feel like you really are listening. So I really appreciate that. You are to be commended for sure. So please know that we really appreciate this. I would also say with hiring, I think it's really important for you to shape your own team and what that looks like. And I would also say that it's really important for everyone to understand we are no longer a small city. We have now hit the medium-sized city mark. And honestly, since I have been here, this council has been just had their eye on the prize the entire time, but also was incredibly watchful financially. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've had to hear We don't have the budget for it. We don't have the staff for it. And of course, that is a big, big reality. But now more than ever, we need to understand that if we don't put people in place, this city will never reach its full potential. You cannot work the current staff that we have is absolutely incredible. And we lose a lot of good people because of burnout you know, a lot of it is because we really have never focused on what it's going to look like at the city manager's level to really be firing on all cylinders. And I think, honestly, Doug, you're really hitting the mark here with those positions, and really in its entirety of saying, how does the city function as a whole? I mean, so many times, I mean, just even with our parks workers, and we know our parks are so important. And so I get financially that we're having struggles, but then it's our citizens and our residents that end up paying for that, because we aren't giving them the best service, because we really haven't done the service of hiring people and putting enough you know, staff in place to get a city running to its full potential. So I want you to know I support you wholeheartedly. I really feel like we've never had a city manager that really has looked at it. I think they've been very financially conservative, which is good. But at the same time, I know so many residents that would say, hey, I don't care about that. What I care about are things that are going to impact me in my daily life, whether it's our parks, whether it's our infrastructure. I mean, it could be the smallest of things, but if we can't accomplish those small things, then we're going to have major issues moving forward. So I just want you to know I'm incredibly supportive. I really appreciate my colleagues and their comments, because I think they were spot on. And, you know, I want you to know that, because this is not easy, and you're really transitioning as a city manager in a really pivotal time for our city, to be honest with you, with how fast it's growing and how fast we're changing. You cannot continue to do what we've done in the past. And I would just say, you just cannot. That will not work. We will not be successful. So whatever it takes for you to be successful, we certainly want to support you in that. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we'll go back to Councilwoman Breckus.
Thank you. You know, I do interpret this as a fiscally prudent budget. 21 positions is a lot to add. Makes me nervous. But knowing that, you know, to the way that finance is saying, you know, structural problems, if it's a $3 million structural problem, and 2 of that is the legacy problem of the ridiculous event center revenue bonds, fiscal mismanagement in my mind, and lesson for future decisions on bonding, maybe not learned, but I think that, you know, that's $1 million play. So it's not that bad. On the ombudsperson thought, I was surprised to see that come back as a position. I thought we were going to do it as a contract, basically how Tumwa does it. And when I hear some of the dialogue about what that person would do, I hear that's reads special projects person to me. It doesn't read ombudsperson. So maybe, you know, I'd really like to see how that gets thought out. I was in the organization when there was an ombudsperson who was on staff full time, and I was in a mid-level position. But my impression was that person did not add a lot of value sitting around with defined responsibilities. And when the cuts came, that was one of the first positions to get eliminated. So special projects person, great. Ombudsperson, you know, just define that role if they're, you know, going to be doing that as an in-house person. Of course, if you do it as contract, you need good contract management team skills. And that's why I've been looking all year, and I understand why the labor, the training manager hasn't come on. And I think that person's going to have a lot of modules that are going to really be helpful to a lot of folks to do their jobs, and really looking forward to that position, getting out on the streets and getting billed with the, you know, a high quality hire.
That position is on the street right now. I'm sorry for interrupting, but that
Okay.
position is advertised right now.
Yay, yay, that's a good one. I'm very excited. Grants, I'm not so much concerned. We're in a new world of grants, you know, other than the oddity of the Pennington that's coming forward to fund a essential services like a police station. Grants is really about intergovernmental, and I'm more concerned about compliance than going after it. But there is a competitive nature to it with each administration. But I think this administration is not going to be doing competitive. I think they're going to be more formula based. But of course, how you deploy those, is really going to be interesting because it's going to be very creative, large scale, objectives that this administration is hoping to bring forward. So those are a few thoughts, but I really want to go back to that sewer slide. And we would be remiss, I believe, if we don't spend some time talking about sewer, because that is the big ticket expense coming up to our population that we really kind of put it over here. And Ms. Lochner, and I want to thank you and your budget team for the way a lot of back end work, but noodle on things and how to display it to us. But you made an interesting comment how the phase 1, it's called MGD expansion up instead is under operations. And I hadn't heard it phrased that way. Can we see that slide?
Sure, let me find it.
Because I think it's being expressed in a way that's been different to me. It's been expressed to me that the $65 million bond that the council decided to take to expand that plant was on connection fees, all paid by development. But when you've got it under operations and maintenance, as I interpret, you're showing that it's coming out of user fees, what people pay monthly. Is that correct?
It's out of both. So it's mostly out of the connection fees, but a small piece is out of operations.
Okay.
Are you showing that on the screen for
I'm
us?
trying to, but for some reason I'm stuck. Hang on, let me try it again.
I'm not going to ask for a lot of information because I know it's been hard for you guys to respond to our request for information. So I'm just going to state my interpretations, having followed this, for a while. And that $30 million where you've got it under the Reno Stead Water Reclamation Facility. So, oh wait, no, you have it.
A very small piece out of operating, and the largest piece is out of in this actual year. It doesn't show anything for that. It's already been all obligated to the project.
The 65 million?
We don't need to budget any more money to that.
How are you paying debt service on it?
So that's getting paid for out of the sewer funds. Again, we're not paying a whole bunch at this point in time because we haven't taken all the draws. We've had a significant amount of draws in the last 2 months. So the payment is coming primarily out of the capital side, the connection fees, but a portion of it does come from the operating side.
I can't understand why and I thought the 30 million was actually the RISWRF. How come you're not showing the RISWRF?
Because we've already budgeted that money. We don't need to budget any additional money. It exists in the project already.
Exists in the project, but in the annual budget, it's in the budget, right?
We appropriated it in fiscal year, in the current fiscal year.
All 65 million?
55, yes.
I thought we took a $65 million loan. And how much did you expend? How much did you expend this FY on that?
I don't have that full accounting. I don't know if Director Flansburgh has how much we've spent on that. But again, the council appropriated the full amount of the bond funds in the current fiscal year. In the year we actually got the money, we budgeted it and we appropriated the funds to the project. So now they are just spending those project funds. We don't need to add it. You would only see it in the budget if we had to add additional money. You will see it in the CIP plan when we get that put together. It'll show you the full project cost and kind of what the expenses are on a go forward basis. And we're looking at showing what's been spent to date and then what's expended, what's expected in the next 5-year period.
What debt service are you paying? You're paying debt service on it as you've drawn it down, correct? If you only drew down 5 million, you're paying debt service this year on 5 million, right?
Yes, so the initial draw was 2.6 million. That's what I believe was on the books at the end of last fiscal year when we closed the books on June 30th. But as we've taken draws, they change the amount that we have to pay when our payment comes up. So yeah, it changes.
Do you anticipate you'll spend all 55 million this FY?
I will let Director Flansburgh answer that one.
So thank you for the question. We won't be finishing the project this year. I think it was allocated though in the current budget. And so there'll be an augmentation. So whatever we don't spend will carry over to the next year. We'll bring that back as an augmentation for the current year budget.
Okay, I would have thought that it would have rolled over into this budget presentation, but I guess you need to close out the books to then augment. Okay.
That's part of that committed fund balance where you see the small little blue line of the monies that we carry forward every year.
Okay. As we continue to pay debt on that, and it, obviously the debt's going to increase, I'd like to know how that debt is being paid for. The debt service, how that's being paid out of.
In the past, the debt service is always paid out of the connection fees. That's a portion of the funding that comes in from there. So again, we have the sewer user fee, which is the quarterly fees that are paid by all the users. We have the connection fees that are paid at time of the development coming in. And so those are the fees that we collect. It's a separate fund, 40,001 versus 40,000. It's all the sewer fund, but we do separate it within the fund. And that's where we take the money for the debt service that is proportional to the connection fee, and the other debt service that's proportional to the user fee comes out of there.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Breckus. Ask one more question, okay?
Sure. What's the balance in the connection fees sewer fund?
I can get you that. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. That's always been of interest to me. And then how much of those connection fees were paid in the Tumworth sewer shed and how much were paid in the Stead sewer shed is also of interest to me.
Yeah, we don't keep separate track of who pays it. It just all goes into the connection fees because we have just one sewer system. It happens to be a couple different plants that serve that system, but we have not ever segregated who paid what connection fee, where it came from, which ward it came from, or anything like that. It's just connection fees go into the connection fee fund.
Well, what's of concern to me is I don't think Stead can pay $55 million in debt service out of connection fees. So, but you said you're not tapping user fees. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I know we'll come back to you. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I want to go back to River Rangers and mental health counselor to most folks. And I guess what I would say, first of all, is that as a council, we have been sort of being thoughtful to our community who has raised a lot of questions over the last couple of years, especially in the last year, about the nature of policing and community-based policing practices. And so I get a lot of questions a lot of times from my constituents about what is the role of policing as it relates to our homeless? What is the role of policing as it relates to major crimes investigations? And for my part, I know that we have been very focused this year on the Public Safety Center, but at some point in time, our police force is shrinking in size as retirements happen. I don't know if we have a sufficient, hiring in this particular fiscal year because we've made priorities about the Public Safety Center. But what are these positions? Can someone just speak to me about what we're talking about with these two? Because it amounts to 4 people, 4 persons.
And who can do that?
Looking to see, the chief. So, at the end of the day, the expansion of the MOST program, Councilman, I think it's important to remember that it's sort of like the forensics in that the MOST program today is housed over the county. And so we get most people when we ask for them, but we can always use more. And so in terms of better utilizing the program, making sure that both our community and our first responders are supported, it makes sense to bring some of that function in-house. 4 is enough that basically we can have a most worker running around on every shift if that's what we need to do. And so that's the rationale for that number. Certainly we could go 2 and 2, and we could beef up the presence on shifts where we're seeing more need for it. But ultimately, in terms of days, swings, and grave, we need 4 to make sure that resource is available on every shift. The River Rangers,
the type of calls that a most person would be going on. I mean, are they responding to our officers? Are they responding to the general public? Is it a combination of both?
The most program itself is designed for the officers to go and help the public on calls that involve crisis or calls that are not necessarily best resolved through traditional police work. There is a synergy, though, in having our most program folks running around with our officers, in that because of their background and training in social work, we do get sort of a mental health component internally for our officers too, just not as formal as actual counseling sessions or the sitting down and labeling it as, we're gonna talk about this. So I think it's a great program for us because we really do punch above our weight class just by having them out with our officers and out in the community.
Can I just ask a quick question? While you're asking the question about these 2 Rangers and the 2 most team members, I absolutely appreciate this program, and I almost think that it should be something that we talk about, because I think we're talking about this as well on Monday's meeting, and I would like to hear an explanation from the department on what they do. I think that's going to be important for us to hear it all. And I know I've heard it when I've attended a CHAB meeting, but I think it would be a great explanation from the department itself, if I could just add that.
The chief will be on your schedule for our meetings next week, and I'll make sure that he has 3 to 5 slides prepared to talk about the programs for you.
Or at least those programs. Thank you. Sorry, Councilman.
Oh, no, I think this is an interactive conversation. I don't presume to know all the details. I just think it's important to acknowledge that in the finance memo that we received as to the various polices or the various departments, Parks and Rec has 2 River Rangers, police have 4 most team members. And those are the limits of really what we're doing in terms of, supporting a community-based policing model. And I'm not sure ultimately some of this was driven, I think, long-term by the mayor's vision for the River Rangers program, and also a general concern that we've all raised about how our community responds to people who are experiencing either mental health crisis or homelessness or some combination of those things, because we're hoping for good outcomes for our community. And so I think it's worth discussing. For my part, and I think I shared this with Mr. Thornley, but I'll share with my colleagues who are on the call, one of the things that I would like to see us put some effort into in various ways is someone or someones who are dedicated as persons to look at cold cases within the Reno Police Department. Some of those cold cases, I understand it now, go back, to the 1970s and even earlier than that. Cold cases are a particularly sad type of case because they don't allow families closure. And the concern that is raised in cold cases oftentimes is that criminals and wrongdoers are able to commit additional crimes, after the ones that are, sitting in our file. So it doesn't look like it got picked up in this particular budget, but I've expressed my concerns to you, Mr. Thornley, and shared them with our police chief. There should be some effort made to look at and really resolve some of our cold cases, because I think it's something we can do to honor the families and the victims families who are affected so tragically by some of these cases. And again, it doesn't look like it made it to the budget this year. That's okay. Not everything can. But as we go forward, I may be someone who continues to remind this body about that important function that can be easily overlooked.
Thank you. Is Councilman Delgado? I don't see him, but I just want to make sure that if he's okay. I don't see him, so I'm going to ask one more question, if I could. So I do not see, and I've talked with at least one of the departments, and I want to bring back the notion of activating the plaza. And I know that we did that 2 years ago, whenever we did, I think we did it the 2019-2020 budget. No, it might have been it was 2019-2020. Anyway, we had the activation, we had the funds to activate the plaza. And I think more than ever, we needed to look at that. And I don't think it was a tremendous amount of money. And I do know that Ms. Lochner had given me that how much money was funded, which was $50,000, and not all of that money was used, but then it was gone. It was swept, I believe. So with that, I just wanted to bring up if there's any possibilities. I've been talking with the Parks Department, and I understand that not only the Parks Department would be available or would be part of the program, as well as Megan Berners. Is it what? I don't remember what department that is. Arts and Culture? Okay. So I think those two departments would be needed to put that program together. But now more than ever, I do believe our plaza needs to be activated in some way, whether it's food trucks or it's some other activity. So that's just my 2 cents, and I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't know if council members want to comment on that, but I know Councilman Breckus, let's go to you because that's all I wanted to put out there. So thank you, Councilwoman Breckus.
Yeah, I just want to state on the comments about the RPD. They're under a performance audit, which is great. Every department, we did fire last year. We're going to do RPD this year. And you glean from that. So to Mr. Reese's comments, I think, you see where you're at on that in terms of cold cases and other sort of measures. It's always helpful to have someone from the outside look at you and see where you're, how you're doing and get that outside feedback. So I look forward to that. On the plaza, I don't know, it seems activated as a fire department parking lot, if you ask me, but I'd start with a master plan on that. I'm not a big fan of special events. I think you make creative places and people gather there, and I see some good energy there actually. So I don't know, we're just in very unusual times about how activation of space and neighborhoods and business districts is going to occur. So I think that's just my comment. The big issue for me in this budget is our part-time pay rate to our part-time temporary employees. I talked to Pat Cashel, who's a contractor, very large contractor with VOA. And as they transition over to CARES, they're paying $13.65 an hour. And so what does this budget show what we're at right now for the parks employees and other part-timers?
So the current budget includes the the plan that Parks had, the 5-year plan, but we will be having a discussion on this next week. It's one of the topics that we will
Oh, okay.
discuss.
Yeah.
So that we can always, you know, depending on the will of the council, we can make the adjustment for the adoption.
And you'll go into the rationale why the park's quality of life function has to be one to do rate recovery, whereas, you know, other functions don't do rate recovery.
We will provide options for the council to consider.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor, can I
Questions?
can I jump in, Vice Mayor?
Yes, please do.
All right, thank you. First of all, I want to say, Councilman Reese, I'm so glad that you brought that up. I think that is an absolute necessity. I just love, I think because you're an attorney and you have a lot of experience in, you know, law and public safety, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I know you have met with many family members. I've met with many family members that have no answers. And to your point, then those people that never are, you know, served, justice is never served whenever those people go free. And so I do think that that is really important. And then, like Councilman Brecka said, we have got that audit coming in. I think that'll be interesting to see if it sort of folds in there somewhere. But I definitely think it's something we need to watch and make a priority at some point, because I know we're sort of on the back end of budget now, but thank you so much for bringing that up. I think it's an excellent, excellent idea. Let me just ask you, Manager Thornley, how are we going to clean up the river if we only have 2 river rangers? Are you kind of envisioning it as more of a board together with the county and Sparks?
So ideally, you know, the county would have a handful, Sparks would have a handful, the flood, TURFMA would have a handful. You know, what we've heard from the broader group there is that there has to be some mechanism for enforcement. And we think that the River Rangers sort of sit in that confluence, right? They're not police officers, but they are not merely folks who are walking up and down the river. They do have some training. They do have some ability to enforce our rules along the river. And that is sort of the tipping point for the other jurisdictions and for the flood board. And so ideally, you know, we pick up 2, Sparks picks up 2, Washoe picks up 2, Flood Project picks up 2, and then we've got a team of 8.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's really, really critical. And I just want to know, what sort of timeline are we looking at to get that group together? Because I know we've talked about putting the board together. But I mean, we have so many moving parts right now with vaccines and still dealing with COVID and onboarding new people, just taking care of, I mean, all these bigger projects that we've been seeing at council. I mean, there's so much going on. So I also, you know, I don't want to sort of sidestep. So you tell me.
Well, the timeline on these folks is largely contingent on whether or not we're able to hire folks who have the requisite training already on board, or whether we're going to have to put it on them. And so there is some post-training involved in these ranger positions. And you know, if we can find a candidate pool who already has that training and who meets our needs, then we'll be able to move more quickly than otherwise. So we'll be talking with the civil service folks and the chief examiner, and we'll get you a better timeline once we have a better understanding of the lay of the land as it relates to the candidate pool that's available to us.
And where are we at with the county and Sparks? Because I keep hearing that they want to, but then I feel like, you know, it doesn't come to fruition. What do you know?
I know that Sparks is expanding their MOST program. I believe that they are still looking for ways, although their budget did go forward last week. So I am not certain. I'll call Manager Kreutz this afternoon and figure out where he's at. I know the county continues to sort of expand their staff. They're planning to expand their staff in the homeless services realm. And I believe this is part of it.
Okay, great. And I just want to say thank you for really paying attention to the mental health aspect of it. I think it's really important, not just for our citizens, but obviously for the men and women that, deal with some pretty traumatic events on a daily basis throughout the city. Whether that's fire or police or code, it doesn't matter what it is. I think now more than ever, like, this is how you really do start treating the root of issues that end up later on, that end up costing people and cities a lot of money. But not only that, if they're not healthy mentally, it's very hard to do a job well. So I just want to say thank you. I think this is the first budget where we've actually talked about it. And I think we've just got to continue to pay attention to the effects of mental health and make it a priority, even though I know this is not really in our purview. It would probably be more of a county function, but I think now more than ever, it doesn't matter if it's homelessness, addiction, mental health. It's no different than when you provide a gym downstairs like we did at City Hall, right? One thing to take care of your body, a lot of people do that, but they don't take care of their mind. So I want to be able to provide every opportunity that we possibly can for, our incredible team at the city of Reno, from the downstairs to the upstairs, right? And our residents. So thank you again. Like I said, I think you did a phenomenal job, Doug. And I've been hard on you. You guys probably don't know this. I've been really hard on Doug, and he's put up with me. And calm down. We're gonna get through this. So I just want you guys to know, he has done a tremendous job, really listening and just. I'm really, really impressed, because there were times that I was really hard on him, and I apologize, but he listened to my frustration, and this budget proves that he really has all of our interest, in our best, interest throughout the city. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. Is there other questions now? I'm thinking, Mr. Thornley, do you want to kind of respond?
Well, I mean, I think, a lot of the accolades that you've all passed on today have centered around me, but I think that is, it's sort of it's an awkward position to be in, because the team, right, the budget team, the directors, sort of everyone who was involved in putting this together deserves all of those accolades and more. It was a real group effort. There were a number of difficult conversations internally before we were ready to come out in public and talk about our proposals with all of you. And I know there have been some bumps in the road, and not everybody got what they wanted, but it's I think a testament to the team that we have and the team that we're building, that we have a budget proposal that, with a few more tweaks, I think we can be really proud of, and I think will help our community move forward.
Well, thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Council Member Reese.
I don't have a question, but I think it just goes along the same lines as Mr. Thornley mentioned. The budget, obviously, every year is perhaps our most important function. I think it's, as a council, we spend workshops and individual meetings, and now we have a series of like 5 or 6 meetings before we ultimately will approve it. And it is, I think, an important step in the year that we'll have ahead of us. It reflects our values. I think that the nice thing about the way that it's been broken down this year is that I think, Ms. Lochner, you and your team have really tried very hard to make it so that we are positioned to have the greatest amount of input in it. And I think you're hearing a lot of the kudos for that, for good reason. For my part, Ms. Lochner, I thank you for all the hard work that you and your team are putting in. Obviously, every time I send you an email saying, hey, I need help understanding this thing, you're very quick to respond and help me to break down some complex things. At the end of the day, no budget is perfect. It won't answer every single person's every single concern. But in very broad brush, I'm very happy. I think what I experienced in my first couple of budgets is simply the difficulty between what we know institutionally we have going on, which is largely people, and that's our biggest budgetary item, our salaries, benefits, and all that. And it's very difficult to kind of take the larger budget question, which is, you know, several hundreds of millions of dollars, and distill it down into the things that we can tweak and tinker with each year. And at this point, you know, it's really the, I guess, in truth, it's the $3.4 million that's proposed as strategic initiatives for the next year. And so each year, I think we're getting better. And while I think there are things that will change over time, I'm very happy with what you've put together, Ms. Lochner, for us, and with the work of all the other department heads who go into it. I know it's a Herculean task, and for that, you have my gratitude.
Thank you so much. And
And I will just echo what City Manager Thornley said. It's not me. I have a team of people that help put all this together. We have some go-to people in finance, and I would just thank the team, the entire finance team.
that's great. And they've done a great job. You've all done a great job. I want to share one thing, and I believe that the greatest thing that comes from this kind of a budget, what I call it a production, because it really has been a production of great materials, great people doing the work. But the best part of this is for the public, because not only are you helping us through the process, but the public can see where we're going and what the direction is and what the materials are. And that's what I believe is one of the greatest parts about this, is that it's really open to the public as well. So, and they have the opportunity to go right along with us and, you know, get the information as well. And they don't have to be here right now. They can go back and they can look at this information. So that's, to me, one of the greatest things, and great for you to put it together. So thank you. Is there any other questions or any other comments that need to be made before we go to the clerk for, pardon? Okay, pardon. Thank you. Councilwoman Breckus, go ahead.
Yeah, there's been a lot of communication from the manager's office recently, a lot of memos coming forward. And one was about, basically, we're going to do the 35-meter pool. Not going to do the 50-meter. Pennington doesn't want to do it. The 3 trustees of the Pennington estate, or I guess, are calling the shots. So when are we going to have that discussion?
We can set that discussion up sort of at your leisure. If you'd like to have it in public, we can do that. I know that what we are trying to do is we are trying to stay on the timeline there, but we are building options for a 50-meter pool.
Well, the memo didn't say when the go time is and how to get there, because the memo said we're going 35 meters.
We will get you more information. Well, you know what? Why don't we, Madam Clerk, can you move Director Schroeder over? We can have some of the conversation right now.
Thank you. Let's do that.
Hello, everyone. For the record, Jamie Schroeder, Director of Parks and Recreation. It's always difficult to try to convey things in writing, so verbally this might be a little bit more helpful in explaining what we're doing. So the pledge agreement that currently exists with the Pennington Foundation is for the proposal that was attached to that agreement that talks about a 35-meter pool. The Pennington Foundation has stated that they do expect us to adhere to those milestones, which we've already met, thankfully to Debbie and her team creating that funding plan that council then approved. They're not saying that we can't not pursue a 50-meter option. However, they don't want to see us stop on the 35-meter option. It's very important to the trustees that we continue to have forward motion in getting a facility built. And so in conjunction with conversations that I've had with Carrie Koski in Public Works, we are proposing that we just continue to move forward with that 35-meter option. We want to bring forward a consultant agreement to the City Council in June. And what we will be asking council to adopt or approve will be designs for a 35-meter option, with the architect also giving us a 50-meter option so that we can truly see what those additional construction costs are going to be. So we'll still stay within the confines of the pledge agreement, which keeps the Pennington Foundation, meets the agreement, but it also allows us the room to revisit a 50-meter option at a later date. And so it meets the needs of both, if you will.
That's good to know that we can dual path it. I mean, I find a real absurdity that we're working on a once in 3 generation pool that's been gone for a generation. And if it's driven by a funder, that's a problem. Funders, very unusual in the public sector, get to call the shots, and I know they came in big, and then all of a sudden, somehow they decided they wanted to come in on the police department, and we even embarked upon a police department with their funding proposal. But, funders do not get to drive public policy, in my view. And it feels like they have, and feels like they are. And who loses are a lot of swimmers who want that 50-meter for, taking it to that level that is needed in their view for competitive. I call it again and again, why does Little Carson City have a 50-meter pool and Big Reno doesn't? Makes no sense. Loses out on state meets, loses out on a lot of opportunities. And if it's going to be 3 guys who are administering, some philanthropist who's, long gone, doesn't even know about this pool, and they're calling the public policy for the city of Reno, I don't think that's right. I really don't, but I'm glad that we're moving forward. So thank you.
Just if I may, for the record, I don't believe that the Pennington Foundation is calling the shots. I mean, we did propose to council, here's, council adopted the plan that we were presenting to the Pennington Foundation for consideration for funding. And so we're still just sticking to the agreement that we approved with the Pennington Foundation. So again, I think the happy medium is that they support seeing a facility get built in this community. And the agreement is currently in place for a 35-meter, but they are open to that dual path of pursuing a 50. We just can't stall any longer on that 35-meter option. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I think we have to also commend and appreciate, and I don't want the Pennington Foundation to ever think that we are not thankful for their donation, or what they're going to be how they're supporting us. So I think that you just said that, but I appreciate the questions, and I think that we all needed to hear about how we're moving forward. And I agree with Councilwoman Breckus. I think we just need to be pushing for that 50-meter, however we can get there. So is there any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I just really quickly, Vice Mayor, I just want to say thank you so much to the Pennington Foundation, because honestly, we wouldn't even have gotten this far. And so we have to really remember a lot of those funders in the community that do it out of the generosity of their hearts. I don't believe they do it for any of their motive than to see our city better. And I want to say, Councilwoman Breckus, I think you bring up some really good points, and I think we need to understand and focus on, there are a lot of economic drivers when it comes to sports recreation, and especially, like you said, we've missed out on a lot of meets and things of that nature. And the same goes for an ice skating rink. When you build it to a certain size, if it's not, it has to be, so many size, it has to be a certain size to have hockey and even get, figure skating competitions and those things. So like when we look at, what we're doing long-term, but it would be great. And I appreciate Councilwoman Breckus, because she's really pushed for this poll. And, but think about it too, as massive economic drivers. Sports recreation is so big. And so I really want us to start thinking in that capacity. And even at the RSCVA, I've really pushed over there and it's falling on deaf ears. I mean, if you think about it, they should be putting in money for a pool as well. So I think you bring up some really, really good points. So thank you for that. And I think we should really look at this long-term and not for just, you know, the health of the community, which I think is super important, but also there's massive economic drivers here when it comes to sports recreation. So thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, let's go back to our Madam Clerk. Thank you, Jamie, for joining us and for the information. So appreciate that. Let's go back to Madam Clerk for, are there any last comments, public comments?
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor, it should be noted for the record that general public comment reserved for this area is public comment that is not specific to our agenda and is received after 4 p.m. the business day preceding the meeting. We received public comment from Trent Hollimar concerned with senior services, Anne Marie Grant concerned with public safety services, and Dawson Thatcher concerned with future planning and fire station progress. With that, Council, we have no further public comment and we would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I think, okay, thank you. We're adjourned. Appreciate it. Thank you all.